Hello, welcome to Through Lucy's Lens weekly videos where I go somewhere interesting and hopefully you will find it interesting too. I'm Lucy, a social historian. I'm interested in the history of people, not politics. Still on my Scottish adventure, and I am at a hidden gem. You love a hidden gem. I love a hidden gem. And this place was recommended to me by my host over in Sandy. He said, you have to come to Kirbuster on your way home. And that's exactly what I've done. Before we jump on the next ferry across to the mainland, I'm here at this incredible free to enter tiny living museum that takes us through time in one house. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited. So let's go. On my recent trip to Scotland, I had the pleasure of visiting several islands in Orkney. On a windy September day, after an exhilarating and for some travelling nauseating early morning roller coaster sailing from Sandy, I arrived in Kirkwall. I had a few hours before catching my connecting ferry back to the Scottish mainland. So after an amazing breakfast at Pomona's Cafe in Kirkwall, despite the foreboding weather forecast, I was determined to visit Kirbuster Farm. Kirbuster is a traditional Orkney farmhouse preserved as a museum in the parish of Bursay on Orkney's west mainland. The name Kirbuster comes from Old Norse, Kirk your Bolstaff, meaning church, farm, settlement. Sources show that there was once a small chapel near the farm, possibly from the 11th or 12th century. A mound beside the Kirbuster farm is said to mark the site of that old kirk. Kirbuster first appears in written records as a farm rental in 1595, and it was valued as 1 barrel butter and 9 poultry. When you step into Kirbuster Farmhouse, you're entering what is widely recognised as the last surviving example of a traditional firehouse that's still open to the public in Northern Europe. Parts of this building date back to at least the late 16th century, and the name Firehouse refers to the open hearth at the centre of the room. A simple fire pit on the floor with no chimney to carry the smoke away. Instead, the smoke rises and seeps out through the lum, which is a hole in the roof above. The layout of the firehouse is stark, but it was typical for many Orkney farmhouses of the period. The hearth provided heat, light and cooking all in one space. Peat was cut and dried from the moors and burned slowly on the hearth. The smell of peat smoke still clings to the walls today, as it has done for centuries. And even as a visitor, after only a short time in this room, your clothes are thick with the scent of the peat fire. This smell accompanied me as a strange kind of scent all the way home to Birmingham, and of course a lovely reminder of my time in this farmhouse. Standing in the firehouse with the wind rattling the timbers on this windy day and a thin beam of light coming down through the lum, I got a sharp sense of how exposed life was here. On stormy days, rain could blow straight in. The cold, stone-flagged floors and thick walls absorbed the damp. Despite the fire's heat, it was never quite enough to fight the gales of an Orkney winter. The stone recessed beds for sleeping are still visible. They would offer some shelter from the smoke and drafts, but they were far from comfortable. Imagine falling asleep with the glow of the peat embers still burning and smoke hanging in the air in the walls, which may have been shining with damp. The Hayes were the last family to live here, and they did their best to improve the room. They boarded over some of the rough walls and added wallpaper and even painted surfaces to keep out the drafts. These touches would have softened life here slightly, but the rhythm of life was still ruled by keeping the fire alive and the weather at bay. Life in the Firehouse revolved around this space. Here food was prepared in iron pots suspended from the pantry beam across the hearth. Families would sit close to the warmth, eating, working and sleeping. Kirbuster has an extraordinary sense of time travel, because as you walk through the farmhouse, you move from this medieval arrangement into something closer to a Victorian home. At one end you have the firehouse, but as you pass into the later rooms, you step forward into the 19th and 20th centuries. I always enjoy an experience that allows you to travel through time in the same space. The Hay family, who came here in 1847, adapted the house to meet changing standards of comfort. The family added new living quarters with proper chimneys and grates where fires could draw smoke away rather than fill the room. They decorated with wallpaper, bought in manufactured furniture and lined walls with wood panelling. These changes show me that while the family held on to the older ways, they still wanted some of the comforts of the modern age. The layers of wallpaper still remain. I adored this museum for not over-renovating this space. I could almost imagine the occupants had simply popped out to do their day's work. I kind of enjoy that uncomfortable feeling of having a snoop around, and that to me always means that a museum or a curator has got it right. The Hay family remained here until the 1960s. Two brothers, Charlie and Willie, lived at Kirbuster until their deaths in 1961. Their widowed sister Maggie remained until 1963. And even then she lived without the conveniences that many households had by the mid-20th century. After their deaths or departures, the land was inherited by their nephew, John George Borwick, who then sold Kirbuster to a George Argo. George decided to preserve the old house rather than let it fall into disrepair, because he noted the historical importance of this firehouse. It's important to pause to think about the hardship of such a place. On a brutal, windy day such as this, even inside these walls you can hear the wind raging through the stone. The peat fire, of course, would have given light and warmth, but smoke would still sting your eyes. Clothes and bedding were never free of its smell, even in the more modern quarters. Food supplies had to be stored carefully against the damp and vermin. And although the boarding and wallpaper made the firehouse more cosy, as the museum describes, comfort was relative. Life was about endurance and routine, cutting peat, tending animals, preparing meals, repairing walls, and getting through and preparing for the long Orkney winters. The house tells a story of continuity, of a family who lived here for over 100 years, adapting just enough to survive, but never abandoning the core of the firehouse. The smoke-blackened rafters, the drafty stone, the faint patterns of wallpaper, they all remind me that an ordinary person lived here. It's a reminder of many of the people of the past who made their living from the land in secluded and unhospitable places. The extension to the house you can see now, with more of a Victorian and Edwardian decor, was constructed in around 1723, and it was probably built as a celebration of marriage. In the extension, you can see the bedrooms and the parlour area of the Hay family, and they were the family who lived here right up until the 1960s. The contrast between the Black Hoose fire and this modernised area is stark. And forgive me for not using artificial lighting to brighten up this footage. I think it's important to see how dark it was, even in the middle of the day. And this will give you a better sense of the environment, an environment like this with no mains electricity or even gas lighting available. When restoration work was being done on this part of the house in the 1990s, the remains of a sway, or a metal swing for holding cooking pots in a kitchen, was discovered behind the Victorian fireplace. This perhaps indicates that another family once lived in this extension, separate from the firehouse, and the annex was a way to bring in extra income or provide accommodation for staff on the farm. In the farm's heyday, there was once servants, farmhands and staff living alongside the family in this wonderful house. The house and farm was donated to Orkney and its people in 1982 by George Argo, and it stands as, I think, one of the best places you can visit on the island, particularly if you're researching your own ancestry. You'll really get a feeling of how those people lived on this beautiful island. The museum is free to enter and deserves many more visitors. Just be aware, if any of you planning to visit have a condition like asthma or COPD, be aware it is authentic and very smoky. But there was no complaints from me, as I think this gives you a real sensory experience of what it really would have been like to live here. As always, thank you for coming with me. I'm back in Birmingham now and I'm still dreaming of my time in Orkney, and there's lots more to come. So if you enjoy social history and having a snoop around the places our ancestors roamed, please do consider subscribing, as it's a great help towards my goal of continuing to make social history interesting, relaxing and accessible for all. There's so much more on my bucket list, and with your support we can explore together. Until next week, I hope you have a lovely week, whatever your plans are, and I will see you on the next one. So until then, happy history. Goodbye.